sometimes covering this league, you feel like going to sleep at night puts you behind. Like you can't afford to do that because the league doesn't. So, look, here's what happened with the Eagles and Tom Coughlin. The Eagles were set to they were going to bring Ben McAdoo in. They were making plans to put him on a plane and fly him in and make him their head coach. But then the Giants hired him last night. So they had to go to Plan B. So what was Plan B? Well, they looked around and they thought, well, Tom Coughlin was the best remaining name out there. So they better, intensify their pursuit and see if he could get serious about them, if they could come to an agreement. So they talked last night. They talked again today. But with Coughlin, this guy is a guy who's going to be 70 years old when next season starts. He's coached in the league for 21 years as a head coach, and longer than that if you count the time as assistant. He wants to coach, but he also wants, the situation to be right. At this point in his career, he doesn't have to take any old job. So he wants the right job. San Francisco was hot after him. They wanted him to be their coach, and he liked some things about the 49ers when he talked to them. He liked the stable of draft picks they're going to have, the cap room they're going to have, but he didn't like that they're 3,000 miles away and that he and his wife would have to pack up and move. That was a consideration there. With the Eagles, my understanding is that he was intrigued that it was close enough to home that the distance wasn't going to be a concern, but that the issue was putting together a staff. And a lot of his former staff with the Giants is staying with the Giants to work under Ben McAdoo, and he really felt like it was important to have a strong offensive coordinator come with him, and that candidate was not apparent to him. He looked around at the field of offensive coordinator candidates, wasn't real inspired by anyone. Mike Sullivan, who was on his staff with the Giants, would have been a candidate, but Sullivan has family issues and doesn't want to necessarily move again. He's moved around a lot with his young family in recent years, so it looks like he's going to stay and be the Giants' offensive coordinator. Coughlin just couldn't get to a point where coaching the Eagles was something he could put together from a practical standpoint, even though in the abstract he would like to continue coaching.
How much, because a lot of people in this Philadelphia area believe that Howie Roseman is a big detriment to hiring an experienced coach like a Coughlin. Do you think that played at all in Coughlin's decision?
No, I don't. I really do. I've talked to people who are very close to this situation. And the biggest issue Tom had with the Eagles, or with any job at this point, was the ability to put together a staff. He's been in New York a long time. A lot of his coaches were with him a long time. You have to be able to have people around you trust, and it didn't seem like he was going to be able to put together a coaching staff on the fly that he could feel good about. In terms of working with Howie Roseman, I can't speak to that. I didn't hear from anyone who talked to Tom Coughlin during this process that was an issue. I had heard that wherever he went, he might want to bring along his own personnel guy, and that may have been something that would have clashed with Roseman. But as I understand it, the key issue where this fell apart was on the issue of staff structure.
So is that going to be something that basically enables him from coaching anywhere at this point? Once McAdoo and Spags get hired, he says, you know what, I'm not going to be able to coach anymore because I can't put a suitable staff together.
I was texting with someone who knows Coughlin. I said, so where does this leave him? What's his option now? And the answer was sit back, count his money, and annoy his wife after 1 week. So I think, there are worse. I don't know why that wasn't his first choice to begin with, honestly. That sounds like a great way to go. But, I thought he'd get in the mix in Tampa. He has family connections down there from when he was in Jacksonville. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. The only job left that could still come open is the one in Detroit. I don't know if that would appeal to him. There are distance issues there, and again, the issue with the staff. So I think he'd like to coach. I don't think he's happy with how it ended in New York. I think he feels like he was scapegoated, especially now that he's the only one who had to leave. They promoted his offensive coordinator. They kept his defensive coordinator. They kept the GM. If you're Tom Coughlin, you woke up this morning going, hey, are you blaming everything on me? And so I'm sure he would love to go out there and make an impact somewhere and be like, what Andy Reid has been in Kansas City, right? And show him.
Right.
But I don't think that perfect opportunity is there for him right now, and I think that's why he's probably not going to end up coaching anywhere next year.
Dan Graziano is talking with us here. Tom Coughlin pulls his name out. Now, there were some suggestion that the Eagles maybe tried pushing some staff towards him, maybe a Deuce Staley or, hey, we want Pat Shurmur to stay on as the coordinator Anything there?
Hadn't heard that. Again, I've told you what I heard. Now, it's possible that's the case, and he didn't love that idea. Entirely possible. That's not something I had heard. I think another big issue is not just the offensive coordinator, but I think he would have liked to bring Steve Spagnuolo with him as his defensive coordinator,
right.
And Spagnuolo is staying with the Giants as well. So a lot, he looked over the landscape and said, it's one thing if one or two guys aren't available, but if literally like his top 8 choices of assistant coaches aren't going to be able to come with him, then what's the point? You can't coach it all by yourself.
And I guess Billy Davis isn't very attractive. Dan Graziano is with us. So what's to say then? I mean, you just mentioned the Eagles and Tampa are really the only 2 jobs, depending on what happens in Tennessee and Detroit. What's to say the Eagles just put their feet up for – I mean, they're not really racing against anybody here other than Tampa, and they don't seem to be interviewing the same candidates. What's to say in a week or so, Coughlin says, you know what? I talked over, so found some guys. I'm more interested again.
I guess that
sounds like we might have lost Dan. Let's see if we can put him on hold for a second and maybe get a little bit better connection. I was saying this at the top of the show, and we'll bring Dan back in here in just a second. What's to say that Tom Coughlin gets some time? I'm just surprised that he pulled his name out entirely if that's the only reason. To me, and we'll bring Dan back into the conversation, Dan. And we were just – see, I'm surprised because of what's happened, that they're really – them and Tampa are the only 2 teams, that he would pull his name out if that's the only reason, that I can't find a suitable staff if he has some time to maybe make some calls.
Well, again, I mean, there's a lot – again, the man is 69 years old. He lives a town over from, I believe, 8 of his 11 grandchildren. He's done this a long time. I don't think it's I know he wants to coach, but does he want to go somewhere where he's going to be uncomfortable, where he's not going to have the people he wants around, where he doesn't feel like, maybe he doesn't feel like there's a chance to win quickly in Philadelphia. That roster has issues. What do they have at wide receiver? What do they have at edge rusher? Is Bradford going to stay and be the quarterback? And is that something that he would like? So, there's a lot of things to it. And I think my sense is of a man who a week ago said, yes, I can continue to do this, and I want to continue doing this, and I want to go out and talk to people about opportunities. But then when the opportunities became real and concrete, kind of went, I don't know if that actually works for me. You know what I mean? So I think that's what we're dealing with here. Now, to your point, could it change in a week? Maybe. But my sense is it's a closed door at this point, and the Eagles are moving on to other options. Doug Peterson, maybe they circle back on Sean McDermott when he becomes available again. Who knows? But at this point, it looks like they're on to plan C.
Dan, how close was Ben McAdoo to being the Eagles head coach?
Well, I don't think the Giants ever ruled him out. He was always a strong candidate for them from the beginning of the process. Now, they wanted to talk to Hugh Jackson, and they were making travel plans to get Hugh into New Jersey last night and interview him today. But then he called him up and said, no, I'm taking the Browns job, which threw them for a loop. And then, they get wind that McAdoo's going to Philly to maybe finalize a deal. And then that's when they decided they should move quickly on this. But he was always they never moved on from that. They always had him, in the building and as a strong consideration. So it's possible the Giants were always going to go that way and never let Philly get at him. But I do think that Philly's intensified interest yesterday, or at the very least the Giants' perception of that, accelerated the timetable.
Yeah, so I guess Peterson and Shermer, it's really a battle royal between those 2 very exciting candidates.
You calling that a battle royal? Yeah. I mean, look, those are good coaches. I mean, Doug Peterson. How do you know with these coordinators? That's my question, right? How do you know Adam Gase is going to be better than Doug Peterson? Is going to be better than Ben McAdoo? Is going to be better than Hugh Jackson? I mean, not all of them are going to be good at this. And so all you can do is make your best guess and go with what you believe in. The Giants have had McAdoo in their building for 2 years. They know him, they like him, they respect him, they know how he relates to players, they know how he relates to his coaches and his bosses, and they feel like we don't know if he's going to be a good head coach, but we think he can be, so let's see. And maybe we have a star on our hands, and that's what you're doing. So Pat Shurmur can coach. He's coached in the league before. Doug Peterson might be a guy with high-level potential. Who knows? So at some point they're going to have a coach. They're not going to let the players go out there and line up wherever they feel like it. So we will see. But at this point, it does look like the Eagles are not are not in a position where they would have wanted to be a week ago.
And, of course, Chip Kelly is hired in San Francisco. So Kelly back in the NFL and the Eagles, no job. But I think it's very interesting because we might chance there were so many years here, Dan, where it was like, well, I'd love to with a guy like Kaepernick or RG3, and then he just never got that quarterback here, and now he's got it.
Oh, Chip. Yeah, no, Kaepernick. Well, that'll be, can he fix Kaepernick? Can he get that under control? Yeah, look, I think Chip Kelly's a good coach. I mean, the thing that what happened in Philly this year, I'm sure, as everybody who's listening knows, I mean, the personnel control, and then did he make the right moves, and did he rub people the wrong way? If you have a coach who gets fired with a week left in the season, that's a coach that the team doesn't like. That you get out of our face. We don't even want you in the building. We're not even going to let you coach the last game. You have made yourself some enemies if you are that coach. Now, if you get hired 2 weeks later for another head coaching job in the NFL, has that given you time to take stock and figure out why it is that it went so bad for you in Philadelphia so quickly? Because if you don't do that, then you're liable to repeat whatever the mistakes were that caused that problem in the first place. So Chip Kelly's very smart, and he is a good coach, and maybe the role in San Francisco will not be the role he had in Philadelphia this past year, and maybe that'll help him. But you do certainly hope, if you're the kind of person who wants to see Chip Kelly succeed, that he has taken stock of what did go wrong in Philadelphia in an effort to not repeat it.
Dan Graziano, great stuff as the Eagles, I guess, missed out on McAdoo and now Coughlin as well. He's at Dan Graziano, ESPN on Twitter. Thanks, Dan.
You got it, Mike.